Today we're going to take a quick look at the track Ugoki. This is a fairly simple track. Let's dive straight in. We're going to focus on the drop only and take a look at how this whole thing comes together. So here we go.
I got the sound to make your body turn to make you boom. Anybody else but you. Bassline. Yeah. Turn to make your body move. Hit 'em.
So it's an extremely bouncy, extremely danceable record, but but the whole thing behind it, it's cohesive because it is simple. First and foremost, it's simple. And making this up, you know, you've got your drums, you've got a simple bass layer, and you've got a fairly basic synth layer, which consists of, you know, a bass line, and then you've got your screech layer, and then that comes together to create the overall tonal characteristics of the track. A quick highlight here is, you know, I've introduced the stems program from my Patreon, and on the stems program I'm going to be making the sounds direct from my projects available to the Heart Academy tier patrons. The serum patch is going to be made available for this month's STEM program on Patreon, so if that's something that you're interested in, make sure you head over to patreon.com/litlords. You'll have access to these serum patches from Ugoki and much more. And let's just solo each of the channels here. So let's just start with the drums. Just extremely simple. Now, and the drums pick up with the swing and variation going into the second half, the second 8 bars of the drop, and it gives you some swing. And, you know, diving into that, I'm sure I've got a break here. Let's see. So let's just dive in. Looking at the actual MIDI setup here, it's just, we've got our samples just lined up right there, and then we've got some breaks that I kind of sampled to use as claps, I believe. Yep. So I use those as a clap, and there's a very small clap on the actual drum rack here, which sounds like this. Just very basic, but I needed those breaks to kind of add some spice of life to this. So now those claps kind of punch through the mix, which is what I was looking for. Now moving into the more swinged out section here, there's a whole break here. This is a drum and bass break that sounds like this. Check it out. And you know, when you bring down those drum and bass breaks from 175 to into the 120 range, it's gonna sound housey, you know, because it's pretty much the same sort of syncopations going on. So you can kind of interchange those and use those. Pro tip. So let's go into the second half of the 8 bars here. Sounds like this right here. So actually it's just a drum loop that does the percussion, and then I just chopped it up because there's probably some parts in there that I didn't want, and I just got into this basic thing that you can move to, that's predictable, that you can dance to, you know, because that's what we're looking for in a track like this. So then the whole thing just comes together like that. And we're moving, and you know, and the kick drum, it's just I used a hip hop kick, cut out a lot of the other stuff in there to keep it low, and took out the low range. I used a punch method for the kick. I didn't really need the kick to have any low end because the bass line is going to play that low end, and that's what I want to come through on those menu speakers, you know, that bass line. I don't want the kick getting in the way like you would in a trap record. So I cut that out. It's around 42 hertz, and the bass line is taking up the sub bass frequency range. So let's dive into the bass now. And then this is what the bass sounds like here. And the interesting thing about it is, you know, for this house bass line I used an 808. And it's just, I sampled an 808 here, and I threw it into a sampler, and it's just playing like this. And it's got that boing, boing, boing that 808s are known for, but I really wanted it to have that boing because it adds to the bounce when you bring it all together with the bassline elements in the synth section. So it's just like that with some simple side chain at a minus 34 dB decibel range threshold there, which gives it some nice punch. So when you play that together with your drums, you're getting this. And you know, that bass line, you can see how that bass line is moving in between the drums. You've got that predictable 4 to the floor, but the bass line is just moving around it, you know, and it hits on the 1s and 2s very craftily. Made up that word. And the cool parts about it is, you know, if you can solo all these different parts of your track and play them back without all the other sections of the track in there, and you're still able to kind of dance to it and understand it, that's a good sign. Because this is making you want to move. So that's how that whole thing is working together. And then for the vocals, I just picked up the microphone, said some stuff, and then
Bassline.
came like that. So I wanted you to go whoo whoo. So if we put the drums in here, then you can see how these are placed.
Bassline.
And you know, that's kind of like moving sort of. That's so cheesy though, by the way. But that's, you know, the vocals are kind of being used as a percussion because, you know, you know, with that hey is that you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So it's just, you know, nice filler that keeps things going that you may or may not even notice when everything is playing in the record. So, you know, moving on to the synth section here, soloed out sounds like this. And looking at that, you know, I told you in the beginning, we've got a basic synth section here consisting of a screech layer and a bassline layer. And, you know, the screeches are mimicking what the bassline is doing for the most part with a couple caveats. So if we just, you know, solo the screech section here, we've got this. And it's just Synth 1 screeches, you know the drill. And, you know, to get it to move the wada, those eighth notes are being moved with an LFO tool. Simple like this. Because without that, it sounds like this. And then this LFO tool really changed the game for the drop. But so check it out without the LFO. It was very straight. It didn't have any kind of swing. It wasn't very danceable. It was too straight. So when we added that LFO tool in, it really changed it up. And with the bass line, it fit in really nicely in an unexpected way. So those are the screeches, you know, and these are basic, not a super far wide pan 34L, 34R like we're used to. It's just a basic 2L, 2R. And I didn't do a copy of my top layer screech. It's just one, you know, the turtle screech is what I call it, and then the pork and bean screech is the other one. It's just one screech that's slightly off edge to the 2 left and one screech slightly off edge to the 2 right. And that was all I needed because I wanted that bass line to really take up that stereo field. You know, the screeches are really playing down the middle. So, but I still didn't want them to be completely down the middle, you know what I mean? So now going into our serum patches for the bass line here, there's actually 3 layers, but I cut them out and cut it into 2 layers in the final product here that you actually are hearing. You know, one is this Lit Lords. It's a simple bounce bass, which is playing our kind of top mid-range, you know, top and mid-range and giving it that punch that you want that bass line to have so you can understand the tonal direction when you're listening to the track, which sounds like this. It's grungy, it's punchy, and it's got that little bit of width to it, but it's kind of subdued, you know, so it's really playing that top mid-range element right there. Now, when we add that into, you know, we've got our middle body bounce bass, and this is kind of rounding it out. You know, this is going to round it out for us and really present those mid-range sounds and elements into the record. And it sounds like this, and it's got a lot of spread. It's taking up a lot of space here. And the cool thing about this is, you know, this was specifically constructed to have this weird stereo depth going on with the bass line because I wanted that 808, which is playing our sub-bass frequencies of the bass line, to sit right in the middle. And when you play all these 3 elements together, you know, your top mid, your belly mid, middle body, along with the sub bass, you're getting a product here that's really cohesive and gelled together. And it really sounds big, you know. So let's play these 2 elements together first, top mid and middle mid. So here we go. Without. You see, it kind of lost that power when you took that top mid out. Without, with. You see, it kind of pushed it forward with that punch. It's very sharp now. So now when we go ahead and add in, that sub bass layer, now we're getting something that's really standing out and coming at you. Very nice, very nice. Now when you play that together with the drums, you get this. And then moving into to get a look at the swing section. It's weird how, you know, when you listen to songs and you're soloing out these sections and you see what actually made the song, because when you're listening to a song, you're not really listening to it from, I mean, you might, if you're a producer and you're like, oh, you know, he did this and that, you allegedly, you think as a creator, you know, but when you're listening to it from the source and you're like, oh, wow, that's actually what it is, it's really funny sometimes. It's just extremely basic. But, you know, when we add that spice of life in this case, it's the screeches, which adds that spice of life, you just get that whole product that comes together really nicely, like so. And the way that screech plays over the top of everything, and it kind of masks and subdues out the bass line elements that you might find, you know, unpleasurable, you know, and it kind of makes everything kind of sparkle, which is really nice. So when we come in and unsolo everything, you're getting a final product that sounds like this.
Anybody knows but you. Bassline.